Section 16 is a brief but important section because it's here where we begin to discuss the importance of certain pre-importation considerations, things that a U.S. importer not only needs to be thinking about, but taking care of long before goods arrive to the United States and or customs entries have to be done. There are a number of subjects that we're going to cover across a couple of sections, but in this one, we're going to focus on what's referred to as the Importer ID Input Record. We will note that in our title on this slide. We can also see on the right-hand side a copy of this Importer ID Import Record. Little small here. Naturally, we're going to show it in a blown-up form in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about the Importer ID Import Record before we do that. Long before goods are entered into the U.S., there are several administrative and or tactical requirements that must be addressed. One of the most important requirements that must be accounted for is that of an importer of record filing its identification number with CBP. In the case of a corporation, we see this parenthetically. The ID number is the employer identification number issued by the IRS, the EIN, as it's called. That's for a corporation. There are other requirements for individuals. We'll talk about that when we look at the document itself. For the most part, importers that are legal business entities, it's going to be the EIN, that is the key number used to notify customs of our import activities. Third bullet, and this is the official name, this Importer ID Import Record is required at the time an importer submits its first formal entry. And we know from prior discussions that a formal entry is the importation of merchandise of a value greater than $2,500. As a trade tip, Customs Form 5106 is used to submit the notification of importer's number. That's what we see on the right-hand side. It's also what we see right here. We're going to run through it, but before we do so, let's look at the lower right-hand side. We have a quick note which states, when this section was recorded, Customs Form 5106 was under review for a revision. Consult cbp.gov for the most recent version. It's not likely to change too much, maybe it will, but we want to say that when this section was recorded, this is what was in place. Let's see what we're looking at here. Let's begin by saying, and it's down in the lower right-hand corner. We won't zoom in on it, but it's in the lower right-hand corner. We're looking at CBP Form 5106. What we will zoom in on is the top part because it shows the name, Importer ID Input Record, which also makes reference to 19 CFR 24.5. Very likely we're going to see that in just a minute too. So we know what we're looking at here. We know why it's required. Let's look to the right and see the type of action. It could be that notification of importer's number. That first time as an importer, we're doing a formal entry. And we're saying to customs, hey, here we are. This is us in the form of our EIN. It could be a change of name for an organization, change of address, or in the case of wanting an address updated, in the Fines, Penalties, and Forfeitures Office, that box can be clicked as well. The basic details. Number 2, importer number. As a company, we already said this, under 2A, it's the IRS number, the EIN, the employer identification number of the corporate entity. In 2B, if it's an individual person, it's the Social Security number. 2C and 2D are scenarios where an entity is asking for a CBP assigned number. That can happen, but not all that frequently, because as we can see for the reasons, I have no IRS number. That would imply that there is no legal entity. Or I have no Social Security number. That could be someone that's not a citizen of the United States. But in most cases, it's going to be one or the other. Let's go with that. Moving down to number 3. The importer name. Block 4 can be a little bit confusing because it says DIV, aka DBA. This block is to be completed if the importer is a division of another company. That's where the DIV comes from, aka that's an also known as, or conducts business under another name, a DBA, doing business as. And if that is indeed the case, the name goes in block 5. 6 is the type of entity, a corporation, a partnership, a sole proprietorship, etc. The import mailing address, no P.O. boxes, we already knew that. Moving down to number 12, the importer physical location, city, state, zip, etc. A couple of questions. 17A, has the importer ever been assigned a CBP importer number using the same name as in block 3? Hopefully that's a no. And 17B, has the importer ever been assigned a CBP importer number using a name different from that in block 3? Hopefully that's a no too. There's a certification statement in the lower left-hand side, printed name and title, signature, and off we go. This has to be presented to CBP upon the first formal entry made by an entity or a person. And we know that a formal entry is an excess of value of $2,500. That's the first step. That's the first pre-importation consideration that we'll look at. We're going to see some more in just a bit. When we looked a moment ago at CBP Form 5106, it made explicit reference to 19 CFR 24.5. That's what we're looking at here. This is an actual excerpt from 19 CFR, the customs regulations. We'll see many, many, many of these excerpts. In fact, we have multiple sections dedicated to how 19 CFR is laid out. This is just one excerpt. We want to illustrate the point, the relationship between what is in 19 CFR, which are the regs, and how those regs are complied with out in the real world. Let's have a quick look at what that excerpt is. 24.5, filing identification number. A. And there's a little bit more to this, obviously, but this is the general idea. Each person, business, firm, government agency, or other organization shall file Customs Form 5106, which is that notification of importer's number or application for importer's number or notice of change of name, of address, etc., with the first formal entry, which is submitted, or the first request for services that will result in the issuance of a bill or a refund check upon adjustment of a cash collection. Basically, 24.5 is the legal backup for the requirement of the importer to file Form 5106. Once again, we'll see lots of excerpts from 19 CFR, and it's always going to be in general where we want to provide the legal backup, the regulatory authority that Customs uses to ask or demand certain things. In this case, what they're asking for, what they're requiring, it's not a request, it's a requirement, is Form 5106. We'll see lots and lots of examples that ask for other things, and we will provide the regulatory backup to support it. That's it for this section. We're going to continue with these pre-importation considerations, but when we pick back up, we're going to talk about customs bonds. Do come back soon.